I think in terms of value, obviously coming from a for-profit or a private sector background, there are more tangible ways that value can be attributed. That's perhaps a little more difficult to do in the third sector. But that said, statistically, when we look at the number of people that are employed in the third sector, the number of people that are served in the third sector, that makes up a significant proportion of society here in Northern Ireland. And I think sometimes that doesn't get the recognition that it deserves. And certainly in terms of impact, what I have seen is a lot of organisations are very thoughtful and intentional about how they measure their impact, not just in tangible, quantifiable ways, but actually qualitatively in terms of how lives are improved right across the spectrum here in Northern Ireland.
Well, I think the voluntary community sector is the backbone of society in Northern Ireland. It's there as a network that exists to support the most disadvantaged and ensure that they're safeguarded, that they're protected, and that they have access to the rights and entitlements, and that they're treated fairly. I think without the community and voluntary sector in Northern Ireland, people would be very disadvantaged.
So if you think of just the impacts that you have through all of the people that are engaged, I think we've 14,600 hours spent last year, just in delivering programs and working with our community. So, it's a big impact, and it does more than just business. It's the mental, it's just raising people's hopes and keeping them up there.
An organisation like ours and our size, we have about 40 different pots of funding. We also go out and we reach out to communities and they fundraisers, which is fantastic. But those contracts that we hold with commissioners and with other funding sources are our core, and they help us deliver our core services. So a particular issue at the moment is European Social Fund funding, and that provides effectively a foundation for 52 organisations in Northern Ireland to be able to deliver their core services, and that is a grave worry. Clearly that's been caused by the lack of access to EU funds because of Brexit, but that was back in 2016, and unfortunately we haven't really done much thinking seriously about how that's going to be replaced. Uniquely, those funds for all the 52 providers and the 66 programmes that are delivered under ESF were delivering cross-departmental outcomes in most cases, and we all got on and sort of did that work sort of unseen and unheard of really, but we were effectively delivering nearly core services for, in my case, in our case, the health sector, and that has been recognised. So we have grave concerns that funding is going to end at the end of March, and yet there's no potential replacement funding on the horizon that we can see.
Well, the challenges are we are without a main funder, and we have been for the last 2.5 years. When we got big lottery funding, which was for 5 years, which was from 2016 to December 2020, we knew that we didn't want to fall off the edge of the cliff come December 2020. So we set up our first social enterprise to start building up reserves. So we opened a charity shop in November 16. So that allowed us to build up reserves. And thankfully, we seem to be managing at the minute, but we are totally reliant on the income coming in from the charity shop, and also the income coming in from the canine therapy.
Assistance Dogs is such a small charity, but there is such a huge need for what they do. Not only Assistance Dogs, as you mentioned, lots of other small charities that are doing life-changing works. The times that we're living in are difficult and are only going to get more difficult, and people will be turning to those small charities more. So yeah, they just need our support. They need the support of government.
The absence of governance here is a huge problem for ourselves and for other organisations, and the sooner that situation is rectified, I think the better.
So I think without Advice NI and the independent advice sector, there would be a lot more people that wouldn't have the money in their pockets to be able to survive. There would be probably a lot more homeless people, a lot more crime. It would just contribute to a decline in society overall.
The third sector, sadly, I don't believe is valued enough. I do believe that because we don't shout enough about what we do, we tend to get on with what we do, and we're rather like the wallpaper. We're there, we're getting on with things and everything's fine. And sadly, it'll be when we're gone that we'll suddenly realise, actually, these organisations, not just ours but all the others, and they were absolutely vital to delivering core services, but also giving society that sort of collective focus, bringing us together, and ensuring that we could talk together with the right languages, breaking down barriers, breaking down really difficult barriers, starting difficult conversations as well. Those are the things we're uniquely good at. And particularly like looking at the recent example of COVID, the way that we are able to respond so much more quickly than other organisations, particularly the public sector, who are much larger, being a lot smaller, we're able to work much more in a much more agile way. We're able to access different types of funding as well, and we're able to much quicker. And so I think that's a serious issue if that is lost.